The U.S. military is hiding the true extent of its Iran war casualties. One defense official says there is a cover-up of deaths and injuries. The U.S. military is refusing to disclose the true extent of the casualties it has suffered across the Middle East, West Asia, since the start of its illegal war on Iran. Credit to Navarro Media for calling it what it is. An analysis by The Intercept put the number of soldiers killed or injured since February 28th at just under 750. The Pentagon refused to acknowledge this figure to the outlet, while other military officials offered outdated casualty numbers. One anonymous defense official accused the U.S. military of engaging in a casualty cover-up. You think? U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM, which oversees U.S. military operations in West Asia, offered lowball and outdated figures to The Intercept and would not clarify the number of military deaths and injuries, even though it has done so under previous administrations. A military spokesperson, Captain Tim Hawkins, said on Monday that 303 U.S. service members have been wounded. If the count is 303 service members for sure that have been wounded, you have to believe that at least several hundred service members are dead. Since the start of the war, but that figure excluded at least 15 service people who were wounded 3 days earlier in an attack on the Prince Sultan Air Force Base in Saudi Arabia. CENTCOM did not respond to repeated requests from The Intercept for updated figures. Public reports put the number of U.S. soldiers killed since the start of the war at least 15. Again, unbelievably ridiculous. But CENTCOM refuses to provide a count of those who had died. In response, Iranian attacks on U.S. bases in Gulf states, many U.S. military personnel have relocated to hide among civilians in hotels and other buildings. Unreal. Both the U.S. and Israel have accused Hamas, amazing you got Hamas into this story, of using Gazans as human shields by basing itself in civilian areas. U.S. soldiers fled military bases to hide in hotels and offices. Iran Foreign Minister Saeed Abbas Agrashish wrote on X, they use citizens as human shields. Again, whatever they're accusing you of, they are doing themselves. U.S. bases have been badly damaged in Iranian strikes, with confirmed attacks in Bahrain, Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Syria, and the United Arab Emirates. CENTCOM refuses to confirm how many bases have been hit. Well, if you look at the map, which we have done, it does appear that quite a few of them have been completely shellacked. And to what end, Jen? To what end do they hope that this is going to result in?
I don't know. I'm dealing with a douche that we had to say goodbye to in the chat. I'm sure you guys will miss Dennis, but R.I.P. Dennis in the chat. Anywho.
What did he do?
Well, he started by just being a cunt about me and suggested somebody first said I looked great for 60, which that's hilarious. And then he said, Jen 60, she looks 70, which I was ignoring because really he's just a cunt. But then a couple people jumped on him and then he started looking like he was going to get a little uppity. And so then I escorted him out. So that's what happened.
Yeah.
I was just watching it. And just so for the record, I didn't kick him out because he commented on my appearance. I kicked him out because he was just being an asshole to people in the chat.
Yeah, well, as I often say, if you want to call me names or get on me, whatever, but you get on people in the chat, you start messing with people, it's not good. And then, of course, you also think back to our friendly conservative troll we haven't seen in a while, Metalopoly. See, if you're going to conduct yourself in a capacity that doesn't necessarily jive with what everybody else is saying, just follow his lead. Because very often that's the best way to go about it. Now, in the case of what's happening and how much worse this is going to get, as you guys know, Jen and I will be in D.C. next week. I anticipate that when we get to Capitol Hill, there is going to be families of fallen soldiers that are going to be there asking questions about how come I haven't heard from my child or my brother or sister for weeks? And you're saying that they're alive? I used to hear from them at least once or twice a week. Now I don't hear from them at all. And you're going to tell me it's because they're under deep cover now. That's the excuse you're going to come up with? Or is it possible that you're basically leading a bunch of lambs to slaughter? That's what you're doing. You're deliberately killing our citizens.
Yes. I wouldn't call it a suicide mission. I'd call it a homicide mission.
Yes.
But yeah, people do not really understand that this is not a winnable scenario for us under any circumstance that we have. This is not a winnable scenario. And the people in charge and the people with brains do know that and did know that, which is why they were fired. Anybody who has said anything reasonable regarding really what our capabilities are, and more importantly, what they are not, has been shown the door. But we're not winning. There's no scenario. Now, and I see people rightfully saying that a lot of people are going to die in Iran. That is true. That is absolutely true. And that is so horrible because they didn't do anything to provoke this. It's completely just illegal and so vicious. But they're prepared for this. So while they will lose a lot of people and they will see a lot of destruction, the payoff, and I do feel at this point that Iran is basically fighting for the freedom of the rest of the world at this point.
Yes,
they're fighting against American empire on behalf of the world, and they will, at a minimum, get us out of West Asia. And whether or not then we turn our psychotic focus back onto South America and continue, because let's not forget that we still have Maduro and his wife. And my understanding is that they're being held in solitary, which is actually illegal because it's considered torture. But somehow we've just passed over that little.
I want to put something in perspective for a lot of people, because everybody's, kind of creature of the moment. We're also an extremely, I'm trying to think of the right word, but we're an extremely technologically dependent culture today in a way that you can't even fathom, what it was like 50 years ago, 50, 60 years ago. And in the midst of what has always been regarded as the worst foreign war that we've ever partaken in, which was Vietnam, what you have to remember about what that war was all about and what it represented is everything that I've told you about what we actually fight for in the States that actually is worth fighting for. The one true war that we fought was for our freedom. When we fought against the Redcoats, that was the one true war that we fought where we were not favored to win. We were extremely undermanned, but we understood our own terrain. We understood our country better than the British understood it, and we used that to our advantage. The standing army of the United States and the standing navy of the United States in the 18th century, even in the mid-18th century, was nothing to write home about, not even a little bit. The biggest reason the United States won the Revolutionary War was because of the standing militias all over the eastern seaboard. The same is true for the Viet Cong. That's why they won. They didn't win because the Vietnamese army could stand up to the American army. They won with guerrilla warfare with their own people that became the military, and they understood what it meant to fight amongst their terrain. On top of everything else, we invaded their country. We came into their territory. Do you really think people are just going to sit idly by and be like, oh, yeah, please come in and take over our country and kill our people?
There are 93 million people in a country the size of like Western Europe, like a pretty big chunk. And I saw somebody asking about the Delta Force. What I do know, and I did see that they were planning on sending in Delta Force, which then of course raises a whole bunch of questions. I was watching Scott Ritter talk about this, where, you don't send those guys in for this mission. You would send them in for something else. So what are they really up to? Who knows? But none of our people that they're planning on sending in there should be, I don't think any of them are even going to make it there.
Yeah.
I think if they make it there, they're going to be immediately seized. I think our people going there are going to be treated like the Freedom Flotilla sailing to Gaza. They're just not going to get there. They're just not. I don't see how that's going to happen. And I feel for all of these people, people that have loved ones that are enlisted right now and are panicking, because you should be. You should be. This is horrifying. And let me tell you, there is no win. There's no scenario where we win in a ground war with Iran. None. None. So this is just, to me, absurd. And what they just fire the people that are speaking up so they don't have to really deal with it. But yeah, at this point, you could probably have good grounds to 25th Amendment him, except unfortunately, the information that he's getting and the advice that he's taking is equally as that. Right.
Yeah.
So this isn't just all of his brainchild. I don't think he has one. So
in Southeast Asia, we killed anywhere from 1.3 to 3 million people. 60,000 American soldiers died, and we lost. Now, some would say, well, how's it possible? Did you lose when the numbers are so extreme in one and the other direction? Because the Vietnamese never gave up. The Gazans will never give up, and the Iranians will never give up. Are you willing to die for this? Because they are.